Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson.
And I'm Shannon Penrod, and I'm thrilled to be
Hi.
here with my friend.
How are you?
I'm really good. We were just saying that at some point we want to take a couple of minutes to recap. I got to go to a great event on Saturday,
Yeah,
the
big
AMT
fancy
Gala.
event.
Yeah, it really was. It was at the Montage in Beverly Hills, and very swanky, I must say. And a lot of really fabulous guests, and a lot of the autism community was there. So it was the AMT Dream Gala.
Autism Movement Therapy.
Dream Gala, because they're creating an academy that, and I wish I could remember what the dream stands for, but it's all amazing. It's dignity and all these other great, powerful words that Joanne Lara started Autism Movement Therapy,
right.
And for years she was doing this wonderful. It's a dance that the kids learn how to do. That's got
very
like
specific movements.
Yeah, with different music, but it's very specific movements that help you to cross the midline.
Okay.
Which we know that when kids do activities that cross the midline on a regular basis, it helps with cognition.
Right.
There's no doubt about that. The science is all in on that. So she had been for years. She's someone she's an ABA therapist.
Yes.
She's got a credential in moderate to severe. She teaches college, trains people how to be effective with this group of kids, this very specific group of kids. But she's been traveling all over the world training people to do the AMT with the kids that goes to India. My goodness, she's going to Greece. Like yesterday, she flew to Greece. Amazing. But what she saw was that those kids, they were making progress with her, but then they would get to like 18, 20, 21, and there was nothing for them.
Right.
The cliff. She really was experiencing it with the kids that were in her classroom. So she said, okay, what are we going to do about it? That's Joanne. And so she started Autism Works Now. And
so is this fundraiser for both of those?
Well, it all comes together because they're making a facility in conjunction with Eva Lund at Special Spirit.
Right.
They have plans to build a greenhouse and a barn and a living place so that there can be several of the candidates that are living there. The greenhouse, they will be growing roses.
Okay.
And that eventually the dream is that someday we can all pick up the phone and dial 1-800-AUT-ROSES and be taking the roses that they've cultivated and sending to our loved ones around the world, which would be great. And then there's another section of the facility where they'll be taking and training dogs to be companion dogs. Not necessarily therapy dogs, but companion dogs, which can happen quicker, and they can take a wider range of dogs. So there were dogs at the event, and when you bring dogs to the event, it's just, dogs and children, right?
Right.
We all want to be close to them. And so the money was to raise the basis to build these facilities out at the Special Spirit Ranch, and they were also acknowledging a couple of really wonderful people. Larry King.
It was a big thing for him.
It was a big tribute for Larry King. His birthday is, I think, maybe today, actually. But there was a big birthday party with ginormous cake. I mean, it was amazing cake. And so he was there, and in Fine Fettle, hilarious.
Is he?
Oh my gosh, he was so funny. When he got up, he had everybody in tears. Everybody was laughing so hard. And of course, there was another award for Dr. Temple Grandin, the Trailblazer Award. And it was so awesome to have her on the red carpet. And, she was in a great mood and having a good time. And there's nothing better, I'm sorry, than Temple Grandin in a good mood. Now, you have been with her before.
Yes.
When things aren't going right, boy, Temple not in a good mood is not the most fun thing.
Right.
But I watched you. There was a day that you were interviewing her and Temple was not in a good mood, you guys. And you totally turned it around. There's that wonderful interview. If people haven't seen it, look on our site. And Temple was not in a good mood when you guys started.
When we first sat down, right?
Woo, yeah. And that's, as much fun as she is when she's in a good mood, man, when Temple's not happy, I don't think very many people in the room are happy. But she was in a great mood that night. Yeah. So she was like the life of the party. It was so much fun.
That's great.
And of course, Joe Montaigne was there with his whole family.
Right.
And And Laura San Giacomo was
What
the
is
one.
her relationship to autism, Laura San Giacomo?
So Laura San Giacomo, I don't know how well known this is, and I don't know whether I'm telling tales out of school, but you've all seen the show Speechless, that's about the mom that's got the son in the wheelchair.
Yes.
And she's, that's based on Laura.
She
has a child who it's not autism, but that he's in a wheelchair, and that her life changed exponentially.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, I think that very few people know that. But so Speechless is loosely based on her.
Okay.
And which isn't that an interesting new thing to know
Right.
about? And I hope I haven't told tales. But so she was there and introduced and gave the award to Dr. Temple Grandin, and it was really lovely and emotional. And there was a fascinating young man, Timothy Sykes, was also getting an award, the Humanitarian Award. He is the entrepreneur. You probably have heard of him, that when he got his bar mitzvah money, right? At 14, and it was $12,000. I want to have a bar mitzvah.
Yeah, that's a heck of a bar mitzvah.
Right? That's a heck of a bar mitzvah. But it was $12,000, and he took that $12,000 as a 14-year-old and started trading penny stocks.
Wow.
He went to Tulane University, and while he was at Tulane, became a millionaire trading his penny stocks from his bar mitzvah. So
That's
now,
amazing.
right? So now he travels the world. He has something like 23 schools that he has built in different locations,
Right.
far-flung locations, to help people who don't have schools. And he tutors people in how to make money the way that he did, and has built quite an empire.
Right.
And so he was getting the Humanitarian Award, and he was lovely.
Yeah.
And it was lovely to see him be there because he's written some pretty sizable checks
Right.
to the whole, to Autism Works Now and to the Dream Alliance, and so it was great to be there. There were a bunch of the candidates from Autism Works Now that were there, and for him to meet them and be a part of, we covered that on the red carpet. You guys can watch it, and that was really fun. And there were just a lot of really wonderful people. We always love seeing Jean Smart there with her fabulous husband, Richard, whose last name I cannot remember for the life of me, but I've always loved him. He's a brilliant actor, and they were just so sweet and kind on the red carpet. And the red carpet was very small, and it was very hot again. We keep
Right.
going to these red carpets that are 700 degrees. Although I must say D&D's was the coolest red carpet that we were on temperature-wise. But this was super, so people were writing in and worrying that Samantha or I, one of us or both of us, was going to pass out. And we were shoved so close together with people that at one point, I was standing there with Temple Grandin, Larry King, BJ, who was from Shout Out for a Cause, was
Right.
interviewing Mary Hart, and Bert Sugarman and Joe Mantegna, and we were all standing in a space smaller than a small elevator. And it was kind of nuts. Excuse me, with extra there, it was crazy. Now I'm going to cough a coughing fit. But it was a really fun night, raised a lot of money.
Good.
Who sang and just blew everybody's doors was Kiki Epson.
Okay.
Have you heard
I
her
don't know
perform?
Kiki Epson,
Oh my
no.
gosh.
Needs water.
She's a jazz singer.
Okay.
With her own band, and I had heard her music before and have always loved her, and she's just beautiful and tall and statuesque and fabulous and sings from her heart. I didn't know that she's Buddy Ebsen's daughter.
Oh, yeah.
And so she's working on a new show that's about her dad. And so she sang 3 songs and told stories about her dad, and it was, there was not a dry eye in the house. Everybody was it was beautiful. How could I forget? One of the other stellar moments of the entire thing was that Spencer Hart sang.
Spencer sang. That's what I was going to say. I thought she was on the program.
They had a balcony, and she was on the balcony. Joanne Laura was standing at the podium, and she was talking passionately about our kids, and she said they all deserve a seat at the table.
Right.
And she said, and now listen to this voice. And Joanne was in this gorgeous outfit, and she went like this, and you look up and there's a spotlight, and there is Spencer in this gorgeous dress with her hair beautiful, bright red lipstick, and she sang this aria from the balcony. And the thing that was super duper fun is that a bunch of us in the room knew that Spencer was on the spectrum, but a bunch of people didn't know.
Right.
Excuse me. And so Spencer sang, and I've never heard her sing better. She was absolutely stunning. And standing ovation. Standing ovation, everybody stood and just, woo, this is fabulous. Just chills, right? And everybody sat down, and Joanne started talking, and she said, wasn't that wonderful? And she said, in case you were wondering, Spencer happens to be on the spectrum. And everybody was like, that ripple that goes through the audience. And she said, and she has a seat at the table. And again, everybody went, wow, it was great. It was really, really great. And I hope that a lot of money was raised. There was a lot of items being auctioned. It was really super fun.
Well, it sounds like a great event. I'm sorry I missed that night.
Yes, because we would have loved it if you had been there. But
the next day I had a birthday party for Wyatt, and I was putting some things together.
And we were at the birthday party, and it was really fun. Jem really enjoyed it, and I had a good time.
Yeah.
And it looked like Wyatt had a good time.
He had a great time.
And sometimes you just got to be a mom. I mean, sometimes, that's the deal, and you just got to be a mom. But everybody was asking.
Well, I missed you, and I'm glad to hear.
And on the red carpet, I told you this before, but to tell them, we're going to invite her to be on the show. But Erin, and I don't know what last name she goes by now.
Erin Murphy.
Okay, so who was the original
Tabitha
from Bewitched. And so she was on the red carpet, and I was talking to her, and she said to me, I said, now, why are you here supporting? And she said, well, I'm an autism mom. And I was like, what? How do I not know this?
Right.
And I said, we have to have you on the show. And
I believe she has more than one child on the spectrum. I believe one has Asperger's, but...
Well, and I was like, how do I do this show with it's called Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, and we're two autism moms, and we'll have to have you on. And she was like, Nancy, could that be Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson? And I was like, yes, it could be. She goes, oh, she's an old friend of mine.
Right.
Because whenever I'm someplace that's star-studded, everybody knows you. And I'm surprised that Larry King didn't say to me, and how's Nancy? But anyway, so she said to give you her love, and she said she'd love to come and be on the show. So we have to.
On, for sure.
Absolutely.
She has 7 children, by the way.
7 children. Yeah. She looks fabulous.
I know she looks like she's stuck in a time warp.
And I remember, she can't be that wildly much younger than I am, because I remember when she was a little girl, and she was on the show, and I was a little girl watching the show, but she looks like she's 20 or 30 years younger than me. And 7 children. Well, maybe that's what keeps her looking young. Anyway, now, but also, before we go anywhere else, I have to say, I don't think that you got a chance to see it, but on Monday night, of course, a lot of us were watching The Good Doctor for our good friend Kobe Bird, who was on the show.
Who was on as a guest star.
He was playing a 15-year-old who's on the autism spectrum, and he's a 15-year-old who's on the autism spectrum, and it was just luscious and divine.
Perfect casting.
And Kobe's going to be on the show tomorrow, and we're actually, the show starts at 10 o'clock Pacific time, and usually we have our first guest at 10:20, because there's a lot of other stuff that I do at the beginning, the jargon of the day, so on and so forth. But if you're tuning in to watch Kobe, tune in a little bit early, because we're having him on at 10:10.
Okay.
And his dad will be here too to talk about what it was like being on set with your child on the autism spectrum up in Vancouver on the #1 rated show.
The show is doing that well?
Oh, it's the #1 rated show.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And this was, all the reviews have said that this is the best episode yet so far. It was so emotional on 2 different fronts, because, there's always 2 or 3 different stories happening. Right. And the other story was gut-wrenching too, but it was hard to watch because Kobe's character was having such a hard time, and he, at one point, he's self-injurious because he's having such a hard time with the medical stuff.
Right.
And, I was watching what all the moms were saying online, and people who don't know Kobe, and they were like, it's so hard to watch. And I was watching it going, oh, but I know him, and it's hard to watch. Yeah. I can't imagine, I was on text talking with his mom, and it was the first time she was seeing it. He was great, you guys. You got to go back and watch it. Look for it.
He's got great goals. He was to be on Broadway.
And I think that, it's like, check your watch.
Right.
I fully expect by this time next year that will be a reality.
Right.
And all the reviews have been saying that. They're like, well, he was on Speechless earlier this year. Now he's on The Good Doctor. He's one to watch, is what one of the reviews said.
Right.
It just makes me so happy.
So great.
Yeah. Okay. So, shall we talk about in the news?
Yeah, we have some stories. One on sleep problems in autism, which a lot of us moms are familiar with.
Yeah.
But it's official that it's a much bigger problem for those on the spectrum. Between 44 and 86% of children with autism have a serious problem with sleep. By comparison, 10 to 16% of children in the genuine
that kind
population.
of caught my attention, and that was a little surprising to me. And I want to say that this story comes to us from spectrumnews.org, and if you want to read the whole article, go and check it out. And another one of our stories comes from spectrumnews.org today, because they just are killing it this week. They're just doing an amazing job. And this article that they have up there about sleep problems right now, the title of it is Sleep Problems in Autism Explained. Great article, because it not only says, here's what we know, here's what we think is causing it, and here are the things that you can do about it.
There's a lot of reasons behind the causes. Some sleep apnea affects more children with autism.
And did you
gastrointestinal
know? Absolutely. And just pure insomnia is more prevalent in the autism community than it is anywhere else. It takes an average of 11 minutes longer for a child on the autism spectrum to go to sleep than it does a neurotypical kid. Now, isn't that interesting for those of us who've complained that we have a hard time getting our kids to stay in bed?
Yes.
It's 11 minutes on average longer than a neurotypical kid.
Wow.
There's something about that you go, oh, well, 11 minutes is a long time if you don't know what's happening. But if you know, okay, well, I'm just going to have to put 11 more minutes in, then I think it makes it more manageable. And they spend significantly less time in REM sleep, which is what really restores us and helps us to be focused.
Exactly.
So,
and the consequences, there are a lot of consequences.
Yes.
The repetitive behaviors can be more severe. Socially, they could be less interactive. Just general tiredness can exacerbate all kinds of existing conditions.
And they go on to say in this article that there hasn't been a really big study to show what the effects of getting good sleep actually are, but it doesn't take, a big leap.
I know what the effects are for me when I don't have a good night's sleep.
Right? So they do go into some different things that you can do, and I thought it was really interesting that there are new ways that you can do a sleep study to see if your child has sleep apnea. And I have gone in a couple of times now for sleep apnea tests where you have to go in and they paste all this stuff in your head. And both times that I went recently, there was a little kid in the next room and they were having a really hard time. And one instance, it seemed to me that child probably had a diagnosis, and the other one, it did not seem that way to me. I mean, you don't know, but I can't imagine. It was uncomfortable for me, and I couldn't go to sleep.
Right.
But so they're saying that now there are ways that you can bring that equipment home, and that there's a new thing called actigraphy, which is a wristwatch-like device that they just put on you, and it tracks a lot of the same things that the old, when you would go in and get all the paste and stuff in your hair, it tracks when you turn over, it tracks your eye movements, it tracks your respiration and all of those things. So if you've been afraid to ask for a sleep study because you thought it was going to be this horrible thing, you can go in and ask for this. But there are other things that they have suggested that could help with sleep that I think a lot of times we just don't even consider. Yeah. And that's establishing a routine and keeping it.
We hear a lot about that, and having the lights out at a certain time.
Right.
Having, the bath and bedtime at the same time each night.
And getting up the same time in the morning, even on the weekend, which, nobody wants to do when you've got a teenager. But the other things that were a little interesting to me were adjusting the temperature and the lighting in the room. And for some kids, that's going to mean making it warmer. Some kids, it's going to be making it cooler. But I don't tend to think about that when I think about sleep issues. So I thought that was really exciting.
And they do say melatonin, of course, can be an answer for some.
Although here on the show, we want to caution everybody and say that just melatonin, and we've talked with Dr. Graham Pichet about this before, that melatonin has like a timed effect that's like 4 hours. So for some of our kids, you can give them melatonin and then they're going to wake up 4 hours later. Okay. One of the things that we recommend is a product that you look at, not necessarily recommend it, but look at it. It's called Tranquil Sleep, and
That's what I use for Wyatt.
Right? And it has melatonin, it has tryptophan.
5-HTP.
And yes, so it's got 3 things so that the individual taking it will actually stay asleep for the whole night and not wake up groggy.
Right.
because melatonin, we have lots of people write in and go, well, yeah, he went to sleep, but then 4 hours later, like a clock, he's up and at 'em, and melatonin can do that.
Okay.
So we only have 4 minutes to cover the next two stories.
Okay. So one is, could excessive brain connections be the cause of autism?
Yeah. Really exciting, and we're quoting from the autismparentingmagazine.com. This is a study done at Washington University School of Medicine, and we've had people talk about this before, that there's something that happens in the autistic brain that all of a sudden around 2.5 it just grows, and what they're realizing is that some of these connections, what happens is that this is why we see sometimes savant.
Yes.
Because they've found the way to get through to the connections, but for other kids it can lead to being confused, not being able to focus, and that there are a couple of different genes that they're looking at specifically that are really interesting. So you can check it out in Nature Communications Journal to see how those excessive synapses are potentially causing the autism symptoms, which could be interesting. And then our last one is fascinating stuff to me.
Yeah.
The fact that there is a missing brain wave in children who are nonverbal when presented the same stimuli as children who are verbal.
And apparently it's connecting the image of an object to the word.
Right. So they showed kids a picture of something, and they mapped what their brain, where it lit up and what it did. And in the first millisecond, there's a first phase of it that the children move around in their brains and everything was lighting up the same, whether they were verbal or nonverbal. But then there's a P wave, PS wave, that was just missing from the kids who were nonverbal. And instead there were scattered lights, and across the kids it was vastly different.
Yes.
Whereas the kids who were verbal, the wave was there and it was the same, and it was in the same place in the brain. So interesting, right? What do we do with this? But if they can get, I think this is key and a breakthrough in the making, because if they can find how to access those parts of the brain, then they can train the brain to have the wave, and then maybe we can get language for everyone. That's some exciting stuff.
Very exciting. Also in spectrumnews.org.
Yes, so check that out to see more about that. And then we're going to take a break because we've got a great guest who's coming up.
Yes, we have a clinical psychologist and certified school psychologist, and we're going to be talking a lot about school placement. Yeah,
because I love that for her, she runs a full stop shop that not only, can you get help because she's a clinical psychologist, but she can also then go to your school with you to say, this is what the child needs and why, and this is what the placement is. So that's a pretty exciting thing for folks who live in New Jersey.
So Dr. Linda Mathias will be with us. Dr. Liz Mathias, and I hope the last name I pronounced correctly.
We'll see, because I've been saying it that way too. So she'll tell us. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with her after these messages.
Arts and craft activities are a great way to practice on skills you're already working on with your child. For the month of November, we'll be making a paper corn. The skill we're going to be focusing on with this activity is fine motor, more specifically the pincher grasp. You'll see why in just a moment. Depending on the skill level of your child, you can also have them help you fold the paper, trace the silhouette of the corn, or cut it out. It all depends on what you want to be focusing on today. The materials you'll be needing are paper, tissue paper, a pencil, glue, and a cup of water and paintbrush if you're using the wet glue, scissors, and a template you can download from our website at facebook.com/autism-live. And don't forget to like us while you're there, or you can always just draw it from your imagination. All right, let's start the activity. First I want to do is take my tissue paper I bought from the store and turn it into strips that I can then turn into squares. Again, they don't need to be perfect squares, because we're going to be changing its form anyways in the end. All right, and as you can see, I've done it to several different colors. I cheated, and they're all right here for me to use. All right, the next thing we want to do is to make the shape that we're going to be gluing all the kernels onto. I have my template that I already downloaded from facebook.com/autism-live, and now I'm going to use this to make the form that we're going to be gluing onto. I'm going to take one of my pieces of paper, I'm going to fold it in half. This way the corn will be symmetrical. Once it's been folded in half, I'm going to take my form and then I'm going to trace around it. And again, depending on your child's skill level, either you can do it or the child can do it. But again, the focus of this activity is the pincher grasp. All right, now that I have it traced, I'm going to cut it out. And ta-da! Here is my blank corn, but it's missing its kernels. So now that's what we're going to be working on. I'm going to use this glue, but you can always use a glue stick as well. The reason why I like this one is that it doesn't dry as fast. So I'm going to squeeze it all over my corn and then take my paintbrush, dip it in some water, and then smear it all over the corn. The next step is making the kernels. What your child is going to do is take one of the tissue squares and practice their pincher grasp. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And once they have this, then they're going to place it onto the corn. And as you can see, it's got a lot of surface area to cover with these kernels, so lots of opportunities to practice their pincher grasp. And ta-da! It's done. As you can see, lots of opportunity to practice your child's pincher grasp. When you're finished, don't forget to share your pictures online at facebook.com/autism-live. I look forward to seeing them and see you soon. Bye.
Can you see me? Can you see me flying by your side?
What is autism?
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 I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to
Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism,
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them. Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
Always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
It's a movement.
Unpredictable.
That's right.
Awesome. Love.
The field I want to work in.
Laughter, fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these three words. There is hope.
And welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And now we are going to be joined via Skype with Dr. Liz Mathias, who is a clinical psychologist and certified school psychologist. And she specializes in assisting children and their families with ASD and all the problems that can sometimes come with that, like anxiety and learning behavioral disorders. And welcome to the show, Dr. Mathias.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
It's good to have you here. And we were also talking just before we brought you on that you kind of offer one-stop shopping at your practice because you have several therapists with different areas of specialty working with you.
Yeah, given that I'm a clinical psychologist and school psychologist, I served my time on the child study team, so I understand how IEPs are written, I understand the testing, how it turns into programs for the kids and related services, accommodations. So I really took all of that knowledge when I chose to go into private practice and to use it. I got frustrated being on the child study team. There's only so much that I can do, but in private practice, I have a lot more ability to work with the families and address the home and the school and to put everybody on the same page, which I really love. I love putting everyone together, so we're thinking holistically, because I'm not a big Band-Aid person. I like to really address the child as a whole and the systems as working in coordination.
In fact, you've got people who tell us about some of the different techniques that you have in your office, because you said you had play therapy. Tell us all the different things that you've got in your office.
So I'm very, very blessed. The practice has grown, and I have 4 therapists in total right now. I have one, her name is Chrissy Sundberg, who does ADHD in-home coaching, which is a new service to us, basically going in and working on executive functioning skills, but also behavior management, even if it doesn't relate to ADHD. We also have Stephanie and Nicole, who work with children from school age, basically up until 21. And they do a lot of play therapy and art therapy, and they're so wonderful and patient and kind. And I also have Michelle, who she and I have worked together in the past, and she's a certified play therapist. She uses the Santre therapeutic technique, which is a really awesome way of processing just emotions and trauma for children, and she brings that wonderful skill to our practice. And so we do offer a multitude of services, and for any point that it changes in a child's life, they can always come to us and we can meet their needs in different ways. I do a lot of parent coaching, so I will go over IEPs, I'll test, all of that great stuff to really help parents keep track of the big picture and think about what is the next step, what else should we, what other information is needed, and how can we incorporate this into the child's program so it's meeting, the school-based program is meeting their academic, their behavioral, their emotional, social skills. We have a comprehensive program.
Absolutely.
How do we know what type of program a child with ASD needs in school? How do you determine that?
That's a big loaded question, right?
Yes.
So let me just start with every child is entitled to an appropriate education. And when you look at a child on the autistic spectrum, we have to look at their profile, as well as the academic programs and accommodations and related services that are available to the students. And by related services, just to clarify, that's speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and counseling in the school setting. And when I say profile, I mean taking a look at the child's academic skills. How are they functioning academically in terms of reading or writing or math? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? How do we use their strengths to compensate for their weaknesses? And what's their learning style? That's a big question that I like to answer, so that when we're taking that child's information to a teacher or school, we're saying, this is the kind of learner that the student is, so let's not reinvent the wheel, let's try to minimize frustration. I also think of a child's profile as social skills. How social is the child? What are their areas of passion? Who do they enjoy interacting with? Do they enjoy interacting with mainly adults, younger peers, older peers? And what kind of things do they enjoy doing with other kids? So that's 2 main areas right there, the academic skills and the social skills. The emotional skills is another area. Is this child anxious? Are they inattentive? Are they aggressive? These are all things to take into consideration. Behavioral needs. Does the child have environmental triggers or internal triggers? Do they need a high, medium, or low level of support on a daily basis just to get through the day? And finally, I think of profile being also sensory needs. That's a very big part of any child with special needs profile, not just ASD, but sensory needs. Is there a sensory processing disorder? And if there is not, what are this child's sensory needs anyway? So are they sensitive to sight or sound? Do they need deep pressure throughout the day? Do they need movement breaks? Do they need time to decompress during the day? So just to begin, these are all the variables that I feel like they need to be considered when we're looking at a child's needs and their academic arena, where they need to be. So
I love that. I love that you take all those things into consideration. But then from there, a lot of parents go to the school and they sit down and have the meeting, and the school will tell them about one program that they have. And most of the time, a new parent especially has no idea that that is a choice and that there are other choices to choose from. So I think, first of all, I would imagine that having you on the team, that you are aware of all the other things that they could have been offered. But even for the parent that does get offered more than one thing, a lot of times we don't know what to choose. So then I'm assuming that you tell the parents all of the choices and then help them to pick out what's appropriate?
Right, and we do that all before the meeting. So we'll sit down and, when we sit down for the intake, I'll say, provide me with all this information. Let me get an understanding of the whole picture. Now let's take a look at what kind of academic support your child is going to need. Sensory support, social support, emotional support, behavioral support. Now your district may be saying, okay, we have this one class or this one program. Well, the beautiful thing that I think a lot of parents don't know is that there is latitude. It can be modified to an extent. But, the one thing I do know from working in private schools and public and private, is that public schools sometimes don't have as much flexibility because they have a structure to go by. And in the private schools, you have a lot more latitude, really the bottom line. So there's a whole bunch of options available to students, and it really is an art. It's not a science, it's an art. It's a big dance that you do, and knowing that there's no one-size-fits-all program for any child, and it takes a lot of dancing, which I'm more than happy to do and hope that the school joins me. But the way I see it, that there's a whole bunch of different options. There's the self-contained classroom, which is the most restrictive. And that's one classroom. It's a small group of students, and they're there for all their academics. They generally will travel together for all their specials. They may join their general ed peers for lunch and recess, depending on how much need that there is, or if they need more support on the playground or at lunch. Then there is the resource pullout for all the major subjects, which is a separate classroom for a smaller group of students, but they stay there mainly for their academics, and then they leave and join their general ed peers for their specials, lunch, and recess. Then there is the in-class resource, which is general ed and a special ed teacher co-teach together for particular subjects. And let me take one step back. The resource pullout can also be for individual subjects. So it can be for all subjects or just a few subjects. And the child comes in and out of that environment and goes back into the general ed environment. Then the next option is general ed with paraprofessional support, which is a paraprofessionals in the class who provide support to either all the students in the class or to 2 or 3 and is then noted as a shared aid, or a paraprofessional that is there for one particular child, and that's a one-on-one aid. And then your final option, which is the least restrictive, is general ed with no support, where it's just the child is in the class with the teacher. So that's all within the public school environment. The private school environment, that's the out-of-district, that is the most restrictive, because there isn't very limited exposure to general ed peers, if any at all.
So it's a
big menu.
It is a big menu, and the $64,000 question is, though, that we see a lot of times, that inclusion on some level would often be the best choice for an individual, but are the teachers prepared to facilitate that? Do they have the right training? Are they equipped to deal with that? And what's your thoughts on that?
So having worked in both arenas, our general ed teachers have had such an increase in the number of children with special needs, with autism, with ADHD, anxiety. The number of students over the last decade has increased immensely. They're not just teaching that general ed child. I really don't even know what a general ed child is. I just know that they're in the classroom, I guess. But they are not always trained. Their needs have grown so much. from what I understand, and I hope this has changed, but when I was in the public school, I asked the general ed teachers who were new out of college, and I said, so tell me, how many classes do you have to take in the arena of special ed? And they shared with me that it was very few. And so sadly, a lot of them do come out and there isn't that much training. So it's really up to the district to then shape that professional to understand the needs of that particular child or particular classification of children, because they're not always equipped, and they certainly can't do it by themselves. They absolutely are going to need more support in the classroom, whether it's another teacher or a paraprofessional, but they need more support because it's hard enough to have to differentiate instruction for any student, and then you have a class of 20-something. So if you're differentiating work all day long, when are you teaching?
It's tough.
So I think it's a very, very, I've always said this, that the people with the hardest jobs are the teachers and the paraprofessionals, because it's a big balancing act where they're trying to meet everybody's needs in the best way possible, and it's hard.
Well, clearly, though, and I agree, I'm an ex-teacher, but I also feel like all of the things that you just said, which are so amazing, it's so overwhelming to a parent, which is all the more reason why we should avail ourselves of the services of somebody like you. So let's take just a second for you to talk about where can people reach you, what kind of clients are ideal for you, how they can get a hold of you.
They can absolutely reach me via my website. I encourage everybody to go and take a look, especially when they're trying to figure out who's my best match for my child, therapist-wise. I can be reached at Dr. Liz at psychedconsult.com. The website is www.psychedconsult.com. I also have a phone number. I'm happy to share that. That's 973-400-8371. For those who may not be in state or are in state but far away, I also Skype and FaceTime to make the services accessible. And as I said, I do travel to the children's schools and work as a member of the IEP team so that we can work collaboratively. I don't go in there with any intent to brawl it out. I really just want to work collaboratively to find that best program. And absolutely, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. And even if it's on just a consultative basis, to give you a little information as you're going into an IEP meeting, whether, if you're out of state, clearly I may not be able to go with you. But for parents who I'll bolster a lot of parents and say, here's your list of questions. Make sure you come out of that meeting with these answers and make these requests, because they are within the scope of the special education law, and you have a right to this, but unfortunately, you have to ask for things by name.
And so then they don't have to be in the state of New Jersey to call and have the benefit of at least some of your services.
Correct.
Wonderful. And so, the wide variety of people that you could see, then I'm thinking, and Nancy hasn't said this, I'm going to say it for you, that her husband passed away almost 2 years ago now, and her son was 14 at the time, and it was a rough time, and trying to find somebody who could help her through that time.
Grief therapy for my son.
Exactly, but understood autism. Right. That was an uphill climb to find somebody.
I found one person that we worked with for a very short time, and that was it.
And I think that you're not the only person to be going through that. That's one of the things that you cover. Who give us a list of what kinds of people would be ideal for you, that you really could make a difference for?
Well, anybody who is looking for parent coaching, even if it's just help me create routines for my children at home, help me review my child's IEP, can you test my child, can you read my child's evaluations and help me make sense of what they mean, support me. This is hard.
Yeah, it's a little overwhelming.
This is a hard journey. It's a very, very hard journey. Not just as a professional, but as a mom of a child with special needs, it's exhausting, and we need support. And I know I like to bounce ideas off of somebody else and say, am I approaching this in the right way? What can I do to be a facilitator of my child's well-being while mine is being compromised, so it's a very tough journey as a parent, and these are the hard parts, and we have to support each other and help each other. So I really say that to all parents. If you need help and you need to just process, even if you're not bringing your child in and you're just saying, talk me through this, next IEP meeting, help me handle this upcoming situation, or my child is behaving this way, or I don't know how to make sense of the test results, because it's gibberish if you aren't trained in it.
It's a wonderful resource that you're providing. Let's put the website back up again, and if you would like to, Dr. Liz, tell us the phone number again where you can be reached.
Thank you so much. 973-400-8371.
And again, for those of you listening on iTunes, psychedconsult.com. Psychedconsult.com. Dr. Liz, we want to thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. Yeah. Thank you.
It's good having you.
It's really fabulous. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend and a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and answer some questions that have come in. So stick
great.
with us.
If you're watching Autism Live, chances are you care about the life of someone, or perhaps many people, living with autism. You spend countless hours trying to make a better life for them. It may not have been easy for you to watch the show today. Sometimes you could be juggling so many balls in the air, you feel like a circus performer. I remember recently saying to a friend that as the mother of a son with autism, plus all the other challenges in my life, I feel like I'm carrying a tray full of glasses of water, and that if one of them topples over, the whole thing is going to go crashing down. This empowerment moment is all about you. Now, I'm not a doctor or a therapist, but over the last 9 years in my autism journey, I've learned some things that have helped me shift from being a victim to having hope. See, I've been in that place, down on the kitchen floor, on my knees, praying for answers of what happened to my child. I've been in that place, covered with blood and tears, after one of Wyatt's giant tantrums, where I said, "Where has my fairy tale life gone?" I have a feeling you're a member of that kitchen floor club too. It's been a process, but I've come from that place of being a victim to becoming an advocate for my son Wyatt, and for many others as the executive director of ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today. Let's start with reframing the way you think about yourself and your child. I want you to say after me, "I'm an activist." That's right. I'm an activist, because just by watching this program, you are taking positive steps to make the world a better place for your child or someone else living with autism. You are a positive force of action in the world. I want you to start thinking of your so-called disability as an opportunity, because it's within our challenges that our greatness is revealed. That's where we find our courage and resiliency. And parenting a child with autism is one of the greatest challenges a parent can face. You have the choice to see this as a journey of self-discovery. Some people take expeditions to climb Mount Everest to see what they're made of. You don't have to travel that far, because parenting a child with autism is an expedition of the soul. Until next time, stay strong and keep the faith.
Welcome back. We had a bunch of questions that have come in since the beginning of the show. So the first one was a question for Dr. Doreen, who isn't here today, and they said, I know this is a controversial question, but what are your thoughts on vaccines? My son was talking and making eye contact up to age 2, but immediately after vaccines, he had a high fever for a week and lost all of his previous skills. I'm worried for my younger son and want to hold off, but my doctor is being persistent and help. And of course, they don't write in and say which state that they're writing from, and we want to be clear that they're this is a very controversial subject, and there is, first of all, I feel very strongly that there is no one who can tell you what you can and should and would do with your child.
And each child is different.
And each child is different, so you need to make the decision for yourself. But I will tell you, mom to mom, that there are some things that you want to consider no matter which way you decide to go with this. And we love to talk about, especially when it's a second child on the spectrum, Dr. David Berger in Florida, who's a naturopath, can help you to get yourself as healthy as possible, either pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, or after pregnancy, and help to get your child as healthy as possible to be able to withstand all the things that they will go through in their life environmentally, including the potential of vaccines. And one of the things that we have been hearing is that it's key, if you are going to give vaccines, to make sure that your child's vitamin levels for A and D are where they need to be. That everyone should make sure that their kids' vitamin A and D levels are where they need to be.
It's interesting.
It's a hard decision, especially when you've already had one child who's had a reaction to vaccines. And so we're sending you love, and there are lots of different opinions out there, but we hope that you'll be able to make the decision for yourself to figure out what you want to do about that. But definitely check their vitamin A and D levels and talk to your pediatrician about getting those levels.
You want to be comfortable with your pediatrician as well. You don't want to be intimidated by them.
Yeah, I mean, if you're
Not good.
Yes, I think that both of us have had the experience of being with a pediatrician about a wide variety of things and saying, here's what my concerns are, and you need to feel like you're being heard and that they take what you say into consideration.
Yes.
That's hard sometimes. Okay, next question. Can you recommend any strategies, to help my son sit at circle time? He's 4, almost 5, and teachers say he will sit for less than a minute, then get up and run around the room while the teachers chase him, which can't be good. Their circle time is only 10 to 12 minutes, and thank you. And 10 to 12 minutes is a pretty, on par thing with kids who are 4 and 5. And so my advice to you about this is that, how we just changed the clock for the daylight savings time? Okay. And it hurt.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it hurt all of us.
Right.
It was like, well, the truth of the matter is that the time actually, the light changes by about a minute and a half every day, and we don't notice it. But when it changes by 57 and a half minutes, it hurts. And we can get our kids to do all kinds of things by changing it by very small minutes. We can work on food therapy that way and getting them to do something for a longer period of time. So great, they already took a baseline and said less than a minute. So my advice, and I'm sure that our therapist would say, then take that baseline and say, okay, the child can last for 45 seconds. Great. Then push it to 50 seconds and make sure you teach him how to ask for a break at 50 seconds. And that he gets a reinforcer and he gets the break after 50 seconds. Okay, then 3 days later, change it to 55 seconds. And then keep giving the reinforcer, and he has to ask appropriately to get the break, and then he gets to run around, and they assign one person to run after him, and they're going to be like, oh, we don't want to do this, it's disruptive, and tell them this is going to take less than a month, and then he's going to be able to sit there for the 12 minutes. And really, I mean, this is how we do interventions. This is how my son got to sit in circle time, and now he can sit he can sit longer than I can, right? But you got to change it by a minute amount, just like we did with the time. We've got 2 minutes.
Use reinforcers.
And got to be a big reinforcer that they have to give immediately upon him asking for the break, and he gets the break, right? Okay.
Other questions?
More questions. My 9-year-old stepson has issues with sleep. He's consistent with getting up out of bed in the early hours, about 3:30 a.m., and disrupts sleep for everyone else in the home, and when he doesn't get his own way. Do we be consistent with skill extinction and learn him that bed is where he stays during the night? night hours and hope that he settles. Everyone is exhausted and nothing seems to work for us. Kind regards. First
we
thing
just
I would
talked
do,
about this.
right, and that it could be if you're giving him melatonin,
Yeah.
you know, and then he's back. So you can try tranquil sleep. The other thing that I would do is get a video camera and set it up to find out what's happening at 3:30. It might be the neighbor's sprinkler that's going on, right? We've had that happen, or it might be the neighbor's dog that barks because the guy gets up to go, you know, put the newspaper to bed or whatever. So one night, put the camera in the room to see what's actually happening, right? And then watch our videos about the bedtime pass. And see if you can, you know, give the tranquil sleep if it's right for your child and their doctor and so on and so forth. I'm not a medical doctor, so, you know, look at the ingredients, decide for yourself. But definitely check and see what's happening at 3:30 in the morning and start the bedtime pass where he gets a big reinforcer if he doesn't get out. Saying to them, you can't get out of bed. Man, we've all parented that way, right? And it's the path to being tired and deranged, right? Instead, don't do that. Reinforce when he stays in bed. And when he doesn't do that, it's nothing happens. It's, you know, no party, no wonderful.